بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. هنكمل بقية الأسئلة. What are the methods required to create changes in subclasses? A subclass is a class that is under the superclass كهيراركي تحت السوبر class, and it inherits the property of the subclass as well. The class definition can be expanded by using the class definition that inherits the methods and variables that are used in the program. The subclasses consists of their own methods and variables, with the superclass variables as well the methods that are used. A subclass can modify the behavior that it inherits from the existing method. يعني يقدر يغير البيهيفير اللي هو بيورثه من السوبر كلاس. A subclass can extend the behavior of the object by inheriting the new methods and functionalities. A subclass override أي any method that is being taken from the superclass. أي method موجودة في السوبر يقدر يعمل لها override. A subclass fills the superclass properties to make it more specific and specialized. There is addition of program of code or could take place, and the replacement occurs only at the time of new functionalities coming up. What is the function of dynamic typing? Dynamic typing is a way to allow the compiler, طريقة بتسمح للcompiler to replace an existing value، ان هو يبدل قيمة موجودة with a type that is not functioning properly. There can be warning signs like incompatible types in assignments. This warning sign show that there is type checking that causes the object from one to another to make it compatible with the current system. The dynamic typing checks for the type of object that is being during the compile time, and during the runtime the value doesn't change. أثناء الruntime القيمة دي ما بتتغيرش. If the class of the variable can be found during the runtime, then it will be possible to find out the class of the variable. A dynamic binding provides the output to the dynamic binding. It allows the binding between the objects to be done at runtime. Why dynamic binding is used in OOP? A dynamic binding allows delaying the decision of running the program. Dynamic binding is used to perform messaging transparently and routinely by allowing different objects to be binded on the runtime. يخلي الأوبجكت resolve it أثناء runtime. It allows the declared pointer to find out the assigned value of a give procedure. Messages that are given with the programs are invoked indirectly. Every method has a message expression that has to be found for implementation. The class of the receiver is checked to locate the implementation of the method that is mentioned in the message. When at runtime the method is run, then the compiler dynamically binds the object. Example shows the dynamic binding للobject. ادي method، ادي الميثودز المختلفة بتاخد البوينتر لكونست كاركتر. What is the purpose of late binding in OOP؟ ايه الغرض من الليت بايندنج؟ الليت بايندنج اللي هو الميثود اوفررايد، عشان ده بيريسولف اثناء الران تايم. ايه فايدة او الغرض من الليت بايندنج ده؟ الليت بايندنج is done at the runtime، بيتم أثناء الruntime، and it requires the message to be passed to the receiver statically by writing in the code or the program. An object can be attached to its own class or any class that inherits the properties of the class. The compiler has difficulty in understanding whether the source is specified in the type declaration or not, as if an object is given, then on runtime it is not possible for the compiler مش من الممكن للكمبايلر ان هو يعرف its class. Then for that the instance of the specified class is binded with the method that is defined for that particular class to the messages. The late binding is done during the linking of the method to the procedure of the program. It consists of strict compile time rules that put the constraints on the program in execution. تحط قيود على البرنامج أثناء التنفيذ. What are the major difference between late and dynamic binding? Late binding allows the rules to be set up during the compilation time, whereas a dynamic allows the method to be dynamically bound together with the function أثناء runtime. Late binding consists of some constraints strictly on the basis of compile time, whereas the dynamic binding is unconstrained. Late binding doesn't exist with the dynamic binding, whereas the dynamic binding can exist with the dynamic typing. Dynamic binding allows the code that is written to send the messages to the object, whereas a late binding just shows the relationship between the sender and the receiver. Why dynamic loading is used in object-oriented programming? Dynamic loading is required to load the object or class when the demand for it rises. Before the loading in the linking phases, all the links of the objects that are linked together gets contained in one file. Dynamic loading loads the entire environment to be loaded at once. It allows different parts of an executable program to be given in different files. Each piece in the program is dynamically loading, and some users' action can be performed on the software. It focuses on the programs that are in the memory. Large programs always require to be loaded at start. The modules can be dynamically added. The advantage of this that an entire program that doesn't require the single feedback, it allows the extensibility of the program that has to be done to make an application. What are outlet connection required in OOP? The object network is arranged using the design of object-oriented programming. The network is having dynamic requirements and can't remain static anytime while running a program. The network has to maintain a relationship between the objects, and some rules are assigned from time to time using a script. Outlet connection depend on the message that is passed between the objects. Messages are used to identify an object, and it is usually used for communication with the receiver. The messages have to be recorded in the database using the object connections. There can be made some instance to keep the track of the objects that communicates with one another. The outlet connections record the messages and store them on the program network. The objects are having the four outlets like an agent, a friend, a neighbor, and a boss, and the rules are interchanged from each other. What are extrinsic and intrinsic connection in OOP? The difference, there are different objects that are part of one another. These objects have intrinsic and extrinsic properties that are applied. An object keeps other objects in the list of the process. There are some building objects that have a list of all objects that are used in the program. The objects that are used belong to building objects. The extrinsic behavior comes when one object communicates with another object. Intrinsic outlets are different, and they are used when an object is about to be freed or archived in a file. The archived message has to be kept in a file. These files are dependent to the program. Subcomponent extrinsic outlet allows the capture of the program for an organization at higher level, and then the connection related settings to be recorded and stored using the independent program concept. What is the difference between aggregation and composition؟ ايه الفرق ما بين aggregation والcomposition؟ Aggregation is a collection of the entire program that consists of only one object, and this object sends a message to itself and other objects by using the method of polymorphism. The modularity concept is used for the classes and the program design to set the network of objects that are interconnected to each other. In this, the program is hidden from the class definition. Composition, on the other hand, is a way to combine all the small subcomponents to provide the functionalities in modular format. Doing this will make the structure less usable. The objects in this can be made part of another. In this way, the object only exists, not anything else associated with an object.